Welcome back to day 6 of the Bliss Kiss Gold Standard Challenge to longer and stronger nails. Today's topic, nail anatomy, one of my favorites. Okay, so we're going to use nail anatomy information to understand how to grow longer, stronger nails. Do you know where your cuticle is? You might not. And do you know what your hyponychium is? Most people don't know all of these terms, and they mix up nail bed with nail plate a lot. So let's get those things all sorted out. Because people are confused about the names for the parts of the natural nail, but many nail technicians actually are not even able to name the various parts of the nail and the finger and understand their functions. So let's change this today. This is going to be a fun one. Hopefully it will be very enlightening. Okay, let's talk about the different parts of the fingernail. The nail plate, we know. The nail bed, we kind of know, but we mix those terms. There's the hyponychium, and then there's the distal phalanx, which is a fancy word for your fingertip bone. And then there's your nail matrix, there's the stratum corneum, there's the proximal nail fold, there's the stem cells of the eponychium layer, and then there's the keratinized proximal nail fold, and then the cuticle tissue. And it's not what you think it is. So let's get started. Number one, most important part, the factory, and that is the nail matrix, and it is behind your cuticle line, and it is where the nail cells are produced. The lunula. This is sort of this bluish white opaque area. Some people have them, a lot of people don't, but it is this area that's right in front of the cuticle line, as you can see with this photo, and it's visible through the nail plate. This is actually the front part of your nail matrix that some people can see, and sometimes it's called the moon. The lunula is the front part of the matrix that we see, or in other words, the visible matrix. Okay, this one is really important because this is the easily confused. The entire planet's been taught the wrong thing. But what we think of as our cuticle is actually called the keratinized proximal nail fold. And that is this tight band of living tissue that most people incorrectly think is the cuticle. And since this skin dries out really easily, people are quick to clip this skin, believing that it's not necessary. Yeah, it is. So we want to please do not cut the skin. The next one is the nail plate. We know it, we all have them, we call them our fingernails, but it is actually the nail plate, and is often confused with being called the nail bed, and they are two very different things. The nail plate is composed of hardened, flat, translucent, non-living, also known as dead, keratin nail cells that form a solid protective layer over the underlying soft tissue. So again, that nail plate should not be confused with the nail bed, which is that pink portion that the nail plate sits on top of. The average person has about 50 nail cell layers. So, some people have more, some people have less. I'm one of those. I think I have about 30 because my nails are really thin. So, everybody's different, but the average is about 50. Okay, the next one is the nail bed, and it is that soft pink tissue that sits underneath and supports the nail plate while it grows. And it also nourishes the nail plate with this perfect blend of moisture and body oil. And this is why it's so important to replace the oils that are lost during hand washing. We want to replace those with oils that mimic body oil. So remember, don't confuse the nail bed with the nail plate. And it amazes me at how many nail techs I even today see and hear talk about the nail plate, and they call it the nail bed. And I could go on and on about that, but it is an important distinction. Okay, so let's talk about the nail layers. You know, I said earlier that there's about 50 layers, but you can kind of see from this picture that's on the left that they sort of nestle together but then overlap, and they just sort of fit together in this weird hodgepodge. And so it's not like the picture of a book where you have, like, you could count the layers. And then these photographs over on the right are showing you what peeling nails actually look like. So in this next photograph, and it says image 22 from Doug's book, so this is peeling at the free edge of your natural nail plate at approximately 100 times magnification, but you can see how those cells are getting lifted up, and this is often caused by water. So again, remember to glove up to protect your nails. You want to avoid the water and prevent additional wear and tear. Okay, and it's also very important to remember, I think you're getting the hang of this, that it's really important to hydrate 2 or more times per day. My average is 4 to 6. So, you know, everybody's different depending on your weather, the dryness of your skin, the intensity of the soaps that you use. A lot of us actually use detergents for what we think of as hand soaps, and those can be even more drying than what is actually a soap. Okay, what is the cuticle, and do you need to remove it, if at all? Some people don't. Some people don't have any. Okay, so let me go sideways though, because I want to talk about the 4 guardian seals. We've got the proximal nail fold, which is what we think of as our cuticle, and then we've got the left and the right lateral nail folds, and lateral is the fancy word for side. So those are on the sides, and then the next one, the 4th one, is the hyponychium and the onychodermal band. We don't actually have to discuss that one, but the hyponychium is what you know of as that skin that you could push back on. It's what, if you gets hurt, if you dig into the dishwasher and stab yourself with the tine of a fork, which I've done a few times. Anyway, that skin we want to be very careful with, because it's very easy to push it back and have permanent damage because we're pushing into the nail bed. So a lot of times we see this with people who bite their nails a lot. I've been doing it for years, and they will actually, because of the biting, will have pushed back their hyponychium, and so yes, they have shortened their nail bed. Okay, so these guardian seals are incredibly important to protect your nails, actually your nail bed and your matrix, from germs and bacteria and infections. Okay, so then that brings us back to the cuticle. And what is it? Where is it? Here's the big thing. You can't cut your cuticle. It is physically impossible. And the reason is because it's the dead skin on your nail plate. Okay? So you can't cut what really needs to be scraped off. Okay, so make sure, because what we think of as cutting is actually cutting the proximal fold, which is live skin. And cutting that skin actually increases the risk of infection and potentially even permanent damage. And we're seeing this a lot with the Russian manicure, also called the E-file manicure, the dry manicure. There's a lot of names for it. It's very popular in Russia because they want a perfect aesthetic, and so they don't want any dry skin. But unfortunately, like in this photograph, this shows what the human eye cannot see, And there's actually a lot of damage that's happening when you buff away all of the skin with an electronic file. So it also increases the chances for splitting, for more ridges, a slower nail growth, more infections, permanent allergies, and it's just chronic inflammation. So you can even have problems with this technique if it's done by a nail tech who says that they are certified in doing this technique properly. It's incredibly difficult to do it without causing damage. So I wouldn't do it. So we can see with this photograph, crystal clear, this is the cuticle, and this is the proximal fold. Now, why would you need to remove the cuticle? Well, polish doesn't stick to skin. As we know, if you're sloppy and you get polish all over your skin, you get in the shower and it just comes right off. Okay. Well, if we've got this dead layer of skin that's riding the nail plate back there, and we put nail polish on that, it's not going to stick. And so we're going to get a lot of chipping. Your polish is going to chip back at the cuticle line. So if you're struggling with that, you have cuticle that you will want to remove. But there's a lot of people who just, it naturally gets sloughed off. And so it's not something that you have to remove because it's really not there. Okay, so should you remove the cuticle if you don't polish your nails? Well, that kind of depends. It depends on how your hands behave. If you get these string cheese peelies that happen as your proximal fold is stretched from this death grip, because what happens is the cuticle, that dead skin, has a really tight bond with the proximal fold. And it can actually, as the nail plate is growing out, it can actually stretch out that proximal fold. It's kind of, I call it a death grip for some people. And if that is happening, then you want to actually gently push back your proximal nail fold with the intention of separating it from the cuticle. You want to release the death grip. That's all we're doing. We're not trying to make the look of our nail bed longer, none of that. We're just trying to keep this nice tight band of skin, and the way we do that is by separating it from the cuticle. Okay. So here's a little video on that I put together on how to properly remove the cuticle if you actually have it.
Hey everyone, it's Anna. Okay, today we are going to talk about the elusive cuticle and how to remove it. Actually, we've all been taught incorrectly. What we think is the cuticle is actually part of a guardian seal that we need to protect our matrix, and that's called the proximal fold. And as you can see from this picture, the cuticle is actually the dead skin on the nail plate, and it can only be scraped off. You cannot cut the cuticle. And the reason that we want to remove the cuticle is because polish doesn't stick to skin. As you can see here, I have a little bit of cuticle. It's kind of hard to see, but that's because I remove it every couple of weeks. And so I'm going to show you that process. The first thing we want to do is release the proximal fold from the cuticle, because the cuticle actually is tightly bonded to the proximal fold and it will stretch it out. So that is why then that skin gets dried out and then we want to cut it. So what we want to do is just very, very gently push it back, either with our fingernail or a cuticle remover tool. As you can see here, I'm really, really gently sliding across the nail plate, and I'm using the intention of release that skin. And I want you to see that you do not want to push down. I'm just sliding my nail across the nail plate. Pushing down on the nail plate is really damaging. So you can see I'm just sliding across, and actually if you push down, you can see that the nail bed turns white, and we don't want that. We just want to separate that skin. So here I'm showing you how you can do it with a cuticle remover tool. Now, because this is a very strong tool, you want to work very, very gently. Make sure that you do not hold the tool up at a 90-degree angle, you really want to slide it over the nail plate very, very carefully. Now, can you see how I get kind of stuck right there? That's the edge of my cuticle. It's really, really hard to see it. Okay, the best way to get rid of that skin is to use a cuticle remover product. The ingredients in the cuticle remover really don't care whether your skin is alive or dead. So we want to protect that skin with Simply Peel Latex Barrier. And then we're going to apply Simply Gone cuticle remover to the entire nail plate. The first time you do it, you want to apply it to the entire nail plate because you'll be surprised how much cuticle is farther up on your nail plate. Afterwards, then you can apply it closer to the proximal fold and not worry about having to cover your entire nail. Let that sit for about a minute, and then you start to gently slide the tool across the nail plate, and you can feel it. You can feel the cuticle, and you'll be able to just gently, gently scrape that off. And then I turn the tool sideways and I scoop off the product and the dead skin. I go back and I do it again until I feel that the cuticle is completely gone. See? Take a look at that. That's the cuticle skin. We want to get rid of that. Can you kind of see how I get stuck there? That's the cuticle. You will feel it. Okay, then we just want to wipe off the Simply Gone and then remove Simply Peel. Okay, this next step is optional, and it's removing the sole horn cuticle, which is the cuticle that's on the underside of the nail plate. The challenge is that you do not want to push on the Hyponychium, which is that guardian seal right there. If you push on it, it's going to damage and shorten the nail bed. So we really, really don't want to touch that skin. Okay, here's the challenge. How do we get the Simply Gone in there and not have it dissolve our live skin? Again, protect it with Simply Peel, apply the Simply Gone, let that sit for 60 seconds, and then what you want to do is put the tool right at the Hyponychium and scrape out, scrape away from your Hyponychium. Then you're going to cleanse your nails with water or rubbing alcohol. Make sure you get all of that cuticle remover off. And now you are ready for your ridge filling base coat.
If you don't have all of that stuff, then what you can do is gently push back your proximal fold once every couple of weeks. Okay, some of the key takeaways. Always, always, always be very gentle with this entire area, especially if you're using a tool to push back the proximal fold, or you're using a tool to actually scrape off the cuticle. You also want to protect your live skin from the skin dissolving properties and ingredients with a latex barrier, like you can see in this photograph. I use that to actually protect my live skin from the cuticle remover, which eats the dead skin. And for many of you, the proximal nail fold can simply just be separated from the cuticle by pushing it back, and you can actually scrape the cuticle off your nail plate. Okay, let's talk about ridges and grooves. Okay, so what causes the ridges? Well, it's really actually more what causes the grooves. Because the ridges, remember I was saying, are the thickest part of your nail plate. So it's the grooves that are the problem. Genetics, age, health issues or stress, and then of course damage to the nail matrix, and we'll look at all of those. But It's actually, for the most people, our ridges become more pronounced as the grooves in between them become more pronounced. And that's actually the problem, is that those areas that are the valleys are areas where the matrix, little sections of the matrix, is not functioning at 100% capacity, and it is actually making thinner, weaker nail cells. So it's very, 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 let me say that a few more times, very, very important. Do not buff down your ridges. We want to keep those. And I love this photograph because it shows this in much more detail. It shows how those grooves in the nail plate are shallower than the thickness of the normal nail plate. Okay? So let's rock those ridges, ladies and gentlemen. Let's instead try using a ridge-filling base coat to fill those grooves so that we have a nice, smooth surface for our nail polish. And what's the best ridge-filling base coat? My disclaimer is that we're all different. And so there is no one base coat that works perfectly the same for every single person. So you kind of have to try some. But over on nailcarehq.com, you can find an article where I tested several different ones using the same process and the same purple nail polish. And all I did was change the base coat that I was using and then took a lot of notes as I went through my life and the daily wear and tear. So hopefully you find that helpful. Also, let's look at these life cycles. Yeah, we've got so many life cycles that we talk about, but there is a life cycle to your nails. And there are 5 stages of nail growth. So first, your cells divide in the matrix, and this is known as cell mitosis. And then those new cells are pushed forward by constant cell reproduction. So it's kind of like a factory and just shoving things out the door. And then your proximal fold cells undergo a hardening. And this is also known as keratinization. And then the growing nail is guided along the nail grooves and the sidewalls. So it just sort of slides out. Okay, and then the free edge is formed as that nail plate disconnects from the fingertip and becomes what we know as our free edge. Okay, on average, it takes 4 to 6 months for your nails to grow from the matrix at your cuticle line to your free edge. So actually, while the cells are being manufactured in the matrix, that can take 1 to 2 months before it even gets to your keratinized proximal nail fold. Okay, so like before you even see it. This is why if you bang your finger and you banged it over the matrix and then that does a small bit of damage to the nail plate as it's being created, and then you don't even notice that until it starts to be exposed. Well, that damage could have happened 1 to 2 months ago and you've completely forgotten, and that's how you get those white bruises. Remember your nail growth life cycle. There's summer and there's winter, and it's constantly changing. Also remember, our nails are not static. The nails that you had, the type of nails that you had as a 20-year-old are not going to be the same type of nails you have as a 40-year-old. Okay, so, and then remember we talked about stress and all of those things. So literally from year to year to year, your nails can behave very, very differently. Just remember, what season are you in? It kind of makes it a little bit easier when you're like, oh gosh, I'm in winter. It's like, well, spring is coming. And like I've talked about before, it's really important to find the best nail length that fits your lifestyle. I want you to pay attention to that the most, because you're looking for that sweet spot where we can make summer last as long as we want. I mean, I've literally had people who have been following these tips and using our products for years, and several of them have said, I haven't broken a nail in 2 years, 3 years. And that's what's awesome, is you want to find that spot where you just stop breaking nails. Doesn't that sound awesome? Remember, everything comes down to the ultimate nail care routine. And again, we go back to these 6 steps, which is really 5. But basically it is start with that mega hydration treatment, the Fab 5 polish wrap, massaging your oil daily, removing your polish properly, doing a mini hydration, and then we just start again. It's really easy, and the great thing is that you get to keep wearing polish.